So obviously I know who you are, but for the listeners that don't know who you are, briefly explain yourself and what is it that you do?
So essentially, I look at solutions to make flying for anybody with a disability more pleasurable. And I focus perhaps power wheelchairs because my kids, Peter, they're not kids anymore, mate, are they? And like you, they're 29 and 31. But at 62 years old, in the eyes of my mother, I'm still her child. So we never grow up in many respects. So that's where my focus is looking for solutions. We all know how bad it is. That's not difficult to find on the internet. There's thousands upon thousands of horror stories, and these are escalating now because we have more and more people flying with a disability as we move along. And I think if we bring on the other demographic, and these are people, and I could say my mother is one of those, who has nearly given up flying because it's just awful for them. The fact that it's now all digital is beyond her, but also seats on an aircraft are not comfortable unless you've got loads of money. Um, and yeah, after saying that, this demographic do have money and they do want to travel, but I would argue the airline industry has made that more difficult for them. And so those are the challenges that we face. So that's why I do it. I do it for my kids, and I started it about 10 years ago. A bit of research, and there are solutions out there. So I go by the website name of Flying Disabled, which sounds like some sort of Batman type alias, but it's not. It's just a moniker that I set up the website as. And I'm also part of, yeah, I'm part of Rights and Flights, and I'm also part of a consortium of three um, that is bringing the Air for All system, which allows power wheelchair users to sit in their own wheelchair and fly wherever they want. And it's still in progress, but we hope to have it flying around in some vein, and that might be test aircraft in the first half of next year.
Ah, so soon. Brilliant. So you said you started this 10 years ago. Um, can you sort of explain what situation you were put in and why you decided to focus on just flying?
Um, well, first of all, I tell you why I focused on flying because
Yeah.
I came from a holiday in Mexico with my daughter, and it was a pretty grim experience when it comes to flying. And then that was at Christmas. And then 6 months later, I said to my son, if you get into university, I will take you to Abu Dhabi to see the Grand Prix out there. Any other sensible parents would have said, well, I'll buy you dinner at Weatherspoons. So bugger me got in. And that flying experience I took a friend of mine who never witnessed the undignified process of boarding and exiting an aircraft, let alone sitting in a seat. So, and he just said to me, Chris, this is inhumane. And so I started researching, and essentially, a colleague of mine who has since retired, Graham, he said to me, Chris, you've got to go to aviation. I did ask charities, I asked for their support and so forth, but and I said, they said, how are you going to do this, Chris? I'm going to travel around the world. I'm going to drink coffee at conferences and try and lobby the industry. Good luck with that, Chris. That ain't going to work. So, but that was all I had in my head. I couldn't think of another way. I don't know, didn't know then one aircraft from another. I'm not a lot better now. So, cut a long story short, I met up with Nigel Smith, who is based in Bristol. He runs a certification company, so anything that goes inside the cabin of an aircraft has to be certified or can be certified by him. And then someone I'd known for quite a while, Paul Priestman. He's no longer at Priestman Good, but Priestman Good is one of the biggest cabin designers in the world. And the three of us formed a consortium called Air for All. So me and Nigel and Paul effectively designed the thing, patented it, and we were about to put it out to like a machine gun as you do with the media. And a friend of mine said, no, go straight to Delta Airlines. They're interested in this. So I went straight to Delta, and they pushed me back to their subsidiary called Delta Flight Products. So Delta Airlines, they're all the big metal things that fly around the sky. Delta Flight Products make the stuff that goes inside the cabin, and they loved our design, and we have now a partnership, a collaboration with them. And as you've seen in the media, it's been launched now for nearly 2 years. So effectively, it's out there, it's in the market. We should have it certified to fly in an aircraft by December the 13th, and then the floodgates will open. Ultimately, unless we change the law and change the infrastructure, the fight will remain.
And this is for all airlines, all companies across the world, or is it particular ones that you're focusing on?
So this is going to be perhaps the biggest challenge. It's going to be open to all the airlines. So we've invented a product called Air for All, and we're going. You can take people now who are really stuck in their wheelchairs, like my two kids, cannot sit in an airplane seat, and they can travel now with dignity. You can save money on the bottom line because you'll stop smashing their chairs. And whilst I know this is not black and white, most power wheelchairs inevitably are the more expensive ones, and they're the ones that get damaged. So, as well as the manual wheelchairs, they get damaged too. But
Yeah.
coincidentally, power wheelchairs are the most expensive. I remember talking to Stephen Hawking's daughter many years ago while Stephen was still alive, and his chair I think was north of $70,000. So yeah, they are expensive. Depends what you do with them. Um, so that was that. Yeah, I went down the Stephen Hawking rabbit hole, and so in theory, the airlines, because they're self-regulating, they don't have to do anything. Trust me, Peter, and if they don't want to do it, they won't. However, the pressure from people like you, like me, the community, everybody around the community is like a pressure pot, and it's building. And the more accidents, the more times it goes wrong, it's appearing on social media. In fact, it's almost normalized, isn't it, Peter? Really,
Yeah.
it's become a bit like wallpaper, and we have to move away from that. I think with the regulators and the legislatures, both here and in the US, because I'm quite well connected in the US, obviously with Delta Flight Products as well, there's a chance we could get it regulated, or there's even better, there's a chance we can get it legislated. So think of it like this: say, I don't know, 70% of the world's airlines go, yeah, we're having this, it's the right thing to do, and it's a good business case, it's not rocket science. But some of the more lowly airlines, and let's call them out, the Ryanairs and the Wizz Airs of the world and the Spirits of the world, they just won't do it until it's legislated. So but then if they don't do it, you have a fractured system. And I'm thinking of in transit flights, which happens a lot in the States, an awful lot. So there might be a case where if they really do drag their heels and do not do it and leave it to the last minute, they'll just wait for legislation, then they'll have to do it. But in essence, Peter, it's a strange industry being self-regulated, but they have to because it's a global industry. And what happens in JFK in America, or in Stockholm, or Heathrow in London, or Gatwick, then it has to. It's not working. It's no harmonisation. So that's another job for Rights on Flights, is to start harmonising these things.
You might have seen it went quite viral at the end of the Olympics towards the start of the Paralympics. There was a photo of a airplane with all the horses in, and the horses
Oh, right.
sorted. And then someone pointed out, oh, they've got airlines for horses, but not for people in wheelchairs because it's easy to get in each box in the airline. But That's
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's all sorts of strange things for airlines, but that was a good little skit that I did see that go round. And that's kind of as true as ever. I'm going to address there's another elephant in the room here. So when we talk about being able to fly in your own wheelchair, now I've separated power wheelchairs from manual wheelchairs because most of the people I know in manual wheelchairs say, no, I want to sit in a passenger seat. But I would like my manual wheelchair to A, be on the same plane as me, and B, be looked after when in storage in the aircraft, in the whole of the aircraft. Now, this is by no means black and white because there's a grey bit in the middle, which crosses both sides, where people in manual wheelchairs have what we call WC19 enabled, which means they're tested to 20G. They are very similar to a power wheelchair. So there are people who in manual wheelchairs that would like to sit in their own wheelchair when flying, and vice versa. There are people in power wheelchairs going, no, I want to sit in a passenger seat. I've got good upper body strength. It doesn't affect me. So that's what I want to do. And it's that grey bit in the middle that we've got to communicate to the community. The other message to the community is we've got to manage is with Air for All, the system that allows my son and my daughter and anybody else in a power wheelchair to fly in their own aircraft, in their own seat inside the aircraft, we're not going to get it right first time. We're going to miss a lot of people. We are going to have so many challenges. Someone called it a moonshot. And it really is that. And you often see this on social media, people saying, look, they can get a man to the moon or a woman, but they can't get a wheelchair on an aircraft. Well, it is a bit like that when, I'm old enough to remember watching Neil Armstrong step onto the moon and, it was the first moonshot. It was really exciting. It was all black and white and it was all kind of sketchy. It looked like a dodgy bit of videotape, as we see now.
yeah.
And they were on there for 30 minutes. And then inside a few years, we're watching astronauts in full colour driving around in buggies and playing golf on the moon. So let us get the first shot in. If I don't capture you, if I miss you, trust me, we haven't. We just can't do it on the first shot because once it's done once, trust me, we'll have everybody coming in wanting to solve the rest of the problems. Although we're a fairly close core group in Air for All, and we have all the right skills around us. I am simply standing on the shoulder of giants. Um, and I'm the one with the user-led experience that can bring that to the design of the cabin, design of the seat. I know exactly what my kids sit in and what they need, and I hope to get that right. Not that I know everything, but I've got a good idea. I've got a rough idea. Which that's what Rights and Flights is made of. It's made of the community, and we are driving it. And I hate it, Peter, and you've seen this 100 times, I'm sure, if not more, is when people who have no user-led experience decide to do something accessible and don't ask people in the community. When you see a ramp that's 1 in 3 in terms of degrees, and you got to not drive up it, climb up it.
I'm quite into politics, and of course, it's been debated in Parliament a few times over the years. Most
Yeah.
not- most notably, Theresa May, I think, when she was back as an MP after she was Prime Minister. And so, with the legislation, when did the legislation start with you, and then where has it gone since?
So the legislation process have always been in my plan. And if I go back, I've had 8 aviation ministers in the time I've been doing this, and that's under the Conservative government. And oh my God, I tell you, there was only one minister who really got it. And I call her out because she was great, and that's Baroness Liz Sugg. She was really good. But as so often in ministers get moved on, and you lose all that continuity. So let's take us back up to the present day. So we have a new government, and before they came to power, the Rights on Flights group had met with Keir Starmer and some of his team, and I'd already knew this because I'd done my research, but Kia's mother was quite ill, and she was in a wheelchair for 15 years. And he sat down with us as a group and said, "Look, I know exactly what's going on here." And he said about his mum. He said, "We want to support this and so on and take it through," which was great. So fast forward, probably 8 months, 10 months, can't remember now. We had a meeting with the new Transport Secretary, Lou Haig. That's the Rights on Flights group, all six of us. We was on a Zoom call with Lou Haig and her team. Again, I have to be careful as what I'm saying here. But it was definitely one of the best meetings in 10 years that I'd ever had with a minister. Just, her focus, and she wants to sort trains out and nationalise them. So, which is great. But I don't do trains. I just do airlines.
So you mentioned you spoken with the Department of Transport. Did the Minister for Disabled People get involved before it got scrapped last year and then it came back under Labour?
Yeah, there was, and I can't remember his name. Foxglove, was it? Pursglove, Tom Pursglove.
Yeah.
Again, they don't know. These people have no user-led experience. And the minister that I say, Baroness Sugg was very good. And I've got to say that despite she doesn't get a good rub on social media, but Penny Mordaunt was very good. But she was here, there, and everywhere. And so from my point, she didn't have the purse strings, but she certainly was here, there, and everywhere, and increasing that awareness. And for my part, she really helped my campaign and did what she could. So I'm forever in debt to her. She was a really good advocate for me and helped me enormously. And ironically, her brother, and I didn't know this until we met in early chat, her brother is cabin crew for Virgin. So she kind of got the idea. Yeah.
That's good. So moving forward, the Right to Flights campaign, Sophie Morgan did a Channel 4
Yeah.
documentary. But I often forget that obviously it was filmed previously. So when did the Right to Flights filmed? Was it last year?
Yeah. So it kind of Sophie, I'd known Sophie anyway, but she came to me, oh God, I think it was, early 2023, because she'd had another wheelchair broken and said, "Look, should we start a campaign, or shall she start a campaign?" I said, "Go for it." And I said, "Well, who do I bring in for this?" And I pointed to people I can trust and also can bring the campaign with some sort of metal and structure. So it's a hexad of people in Rights on Flights. Obviously, myself and Sophie Morgan. Then we have Jet Gates, who operates the dark art of social media for us, and she's been incredible. Then we have Josh Winterskill. Again, he's in aviation, does a lot of products to help people fly. And then we have Martin Sibley, who's a bit of a legend at his own lunchtime, is Martin, and who runs Purple Goat, or started that project. And my good friend and fellow compatriot is Roberto Castigliano. And Roberto brings to the group policy. So with myself and Roberto, we are totally aviation. We don't deviate. So we're a hexad, and I love that word, hexad. It's a group of six. And we intend to bring better legislation, which we've started with the Assisted Air Travel Act, and also looking at other things which I can't talk about too much.
Well, of course not. And then it depends which side of the airline you're on, whether you're by the window, whether you're on the middle aisle, or if you look at the toilet, you've got
Who
asked to
knows?
oh. So, what should happen there? Should the toilet be, or at least another toilet, at the front of the airline for the disabled person, as well as one at the back for everyone else? Or, what should be changed or refigured? Because obviously it'd be at the front and the toilets at the back and stuff like that.
It's the toilets. Oh my God. Um, yeah, it's a tricky one. Then, obviously, see, regulation has not on twin aisle aircraft, the big jumbos, has and then you've got regulation on a single aisle aircraft, and the regulation on single aisle aircraft has not kept pace with what's going on a twin aisle. So a twin aisle does have an accessible loo toilet, quite a roomy one, the ones I've seen anyway. But that regulation does not apply to single aisle aircraft. It's been changed now in America, but guess what? We've got to wait, I think, 10 or 15 years for that to happen. So, it's just okay. What can you do? With regard to toilets, yeah, it's a tough one. Single aisle aircraft. I don't want to dehydrate because it's unsafe, Mr. Airline. That's what you're asking me to do, isn't it? You're asking me to not drink or eat several hours before I fly. And the only time I ever get that instruction is when I'm going into an operating theatre. So are you the same? Is it that dangerous? Um, I tell you an interesting story. I was involved in consulting on an aircraft lavatory. Now, the company that wanted to build this thing said, Chris, we want to make it so it's a wide spectrum, everybody from wheelchairs to someone who's maybe blind and has got poor sight or deaf or hard of hearing, autism. Throw it all in and see what comes out. So the interesting one, first and foremost, is if you put voice control, for example, on a toilet. You're in a plane that's flying globally. What language do you put it in? Okay, so that's your first problem. Your second problem is voice control will probably scare the bejesus out of anybody in on the autistic spectrum, depending on what end that is. And yeah, so and also people were telling me that were coming from. I asked them some questions from the blind and short-sighted and the deaf community. Let's say that, and some of those solutions conflicted. So, in other words, to quote JFK, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. So, what we have to remember as we move along on this journey, you're probably not going to capture everybody, but we'll try very hard.
Yes. And you can just imagine on these voice controlled toilets, Siri, shut the door, or Alexa, flush, and everyone's Alexa's on the plane goes up or whatever. Brilliant. Um so
You're way ahead here, Peter, aren't you? You're way ahead.
yeah, the what would you like an ideal future to be? No more campaigning or you know
I want to be in the future where I don't have to do anything and everything's right, and we can get rid of all these access boards. We can get rid of all of that, and the world is normalised, and we're all on a level playing field. I mean, that's the ideal. But the reality is, and while we continue to change the culture, that will forever be around us. The ideal for me for air travel is that both my children, Taylor and Jordan, will can just go and fly with a PA, not me. And I'm 62. I'm not around forever. Um, and that can go on holiday. My son wants to be a journalist in F1. As you know, he's got all the credentials down there at Solent. Got all his degree and masters, and he wants to travel around the world doing that. And my daughter just wants to ski down mountains in a in a sit ski. So for me, if this helps facilitate that in the future, then I've done what I set out to do, and anybody else that could benefit from that, then that's fine by me. And I have to say the community have been fantastic. They really have been supportive. Yes, so there's lots of challenges ahead, and Peter, and I think these are not going to go away. I get a sense that next year will be a huge year. I think um, almost starting in January. We will kick off the new year. Air for All will have its test certificate. It's something called a TSO, which is a technical standards order. And then we can start moving to an STC, which means we can retrofit aircraft. So I think there will be a huge noise next year. I think if the minister, Lou Haig, is true to her words, then we can start moving on other things as well that she wants to work with and use rights on flights. But what we want to do, and we're working on this at the moment, the Rights on Flights group are building something called Cabin Crew, where we want people around the world to look on their social media feeds, tag in Rights on Flights, get the good stuff out there and the bad stuff out there. And we want to use those people around the world to support and escalate the social media even more. So whether you're in Guatemala, Canada, Australia, Botswana, we want cabin crew to come out and use the social media. Unfortunately, we can't pay anybody. I mean, we're not being paid.
Going ahead. So is there some sort of plan future if you can maybe step away, someone else to replace you? What's the plan? I mean, obviously you're gonna still be doing it.
I'd like to think I will. I'd like to think that, as I say, Air for All starts getting onto aircraft next year. We do this legislation, um, and I've kind of, and I want to follow that through. So I don't know how long that would take, but looking at it from watching my children go through their care and education, I just think I've got a lot more to give, and I'd love to apply to go into the House of Lords and maybe look at some of the legislation that's going through. And I know people see as the House of Lords as a kind of glorified care home, but it's you dig deeper, and it is actually quite a centre of excellence, because what you have there is there's always a little bit of political bias, but it's all a level playing field. So I will go in as what they call a crossbencher. So I'd like to do that. I feel like I've got something to give and bring. I have no political kind of tribe that I sit with. And I think it's important as a campaigner that you try and stay apolitical. Government is crucial, but it also business. So, they link together. We need industry to solve the problems. And we need government to go, oh, I think you've solved that. In fact, I think it's so good and it's going to save lives that we should start to look at maybe some sort of legislation towards that. And in between that is the regulators. And just a last point on kind of governance, if you like, the Civil Aviation Authority, the CAA, um, one of the things we're pushing for is the government to give them more powers. So, Peter, you will know, and then you see this 100 times, people get loaded on an aircraft on that aisle wheelchair, carried up through a plane with a full aircraft, yeah, and they should not do that. That's against the law. All right. But what does that mean? Do they get fined? No. Do they get ticked off? Maybe. But they can keep doing it. So the likes of Ryanair and Wizz Air and others, of course, they'll say different. No, we believe everybody should have the same experience when flying, but as long as it doesn't affect our turnaround times and our profit. Okay. So we need the Civil Aviation Authority to have more powers. So if an airline loads my son on and it's in front of a whole load of people, they've broken the door. So they get a fine. Let's call it £1,000. Oh, they've done it again. Oh, we'll double that, £2,000. Oh, you can keep doing it. Well, it's £4,000 fine now, and it just goes up and goes up and goes up until they learn how to do it.
So we've got the stuff happening next year, and the campaign's gone off with Sophie Morgan. Brilliant documentary on Channel 4.
That's good, was it, Peter? Was good.
Yeah, yeah. And I keep seeing Sophie Morgan's everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. It's just brilliant. And with the group that you're on, you're talking about, you want to see the end result, the legislation. Is there anyone else who might want to put forward or say?
So I think I go back to this whole. I'd like to think that airlines will start being more human about the way to design their cabin interiors, and I mean that from the economy sense. And I think it's not all about the money. Yes, we're in a capitalist organization and we're consumers and we've got a million apps to try and find the cheapest deal. But we can still do that, but just make it a little bit more human. Just give us a few more inches in front of us and a few more inches left and right, and you'll have some happy bunnies, and it will make air travel not only pleasant but also safer. Because the more you cram us in tighter than a pack of sardines, the more problems you're going to have. So yeah, it's difficult. But listen, it's relatively cheap to fly by air.
One thing that I just remembered I was going to say, but people necessarily don't realize is it's not just people who are born with the disability, it's also people that get disabled as they get older. Like you said, Kiss,
Yes,
Emma's mum, yourself in the future, maybe Chris as well. You
of
know,
course, Peter. Everything's possible.
yeah, that's the sort of demographic that should be focused.
Yeah, and when I I'm talking tomorrow to a load of ground handlers, and I will say to them, look, you're all fine at the moment, but anything could happen. And I know people that have been in accidents, or they've suddenly MS has come on them. Or a good case example, most recently, is the rugby player Rob Burrows. You do not know what tomorrow will bring, so be prepared. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a great thing to finish on. Thank you so much for giving me your time, Chris.
My pleasure, Peter. And yeah, I was really excited when I was talking to you. Didn't realise he was going to come from Paris, though. So I feel very special.